In the spirit of reconciliation, Up Past Bedtime would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the incredible lands in which we record this podcast. By extension, we pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, their past and present elders, and the connection they have to Australia's land, sea, and community. Hello and welcome back to Up Past Bedtime. I'm Bella Messina and I am going to be staying up late with you tonight. Now, I'm going to say this is going to be the shortest intro of all time because we do have a guest on today, the incredible Mia Findlay, or What Mia Did Next on TikTok and Instagram. And we've already recorded the interview and let me tell you, we yapped. We yapped and yapped and yapped and yapped and I actually still had to cut us short. It is a longer episode today, but I think it is really, really insightful, really interesting. So I do encourage you to listen to the whole thing. Tonight, we are going to be talking about something that every single woman I know has struggled with: how much we bend, mold, and contort ourselves around the men in our lives without even realizing it. And I've brought in someone who actually knows her stuff on this topic, on how we can start decentering men in our lives. Today's guest is someone whose work has genuinely changed the lives of so many women. Mia Findlay, as I said, or What Mia Did Next, is an eating disorder recovery advocate, a consultant, and the host of Beyond Body podcast. You might know her from one of her many viral TikToks. That is personally where I came across Mia. She is known for unpacking the sneaky ways internalized sexism, body image, validation seeking, and patriarchal expectations weave into the everyday choices of women. She has a really incredible way of explaining why so many of us subconsciously center men, their opinions, their comfort, their desires, even when we're being independent. And she does it without judgment, just a lot of clarity and a little bit of sass, but that's why I love her. She is perfect for this chat, and I am so excited for you guys to listen. So let's just get straight into it. Welcome to season 4 of Up Past Bedtime with me, Bella Messina. This season, we're doing more real, more raw, more unfiltered late night chats that should feel like a conversation with your bestie. I'll be talking about everything: life, love, motherhood, and the messy middle of figuring out your 20s and 30s. So let's get right to oversharing, shall we? Because honestly, the best conversations always happen when you're up past bedtime. Hello, Mia, and welcome to Up Past Bedtime. I'm so excited to have you on. Mia and I were just on the studio before, talking off the mic for 20 minutes. And I was like, we got to turn this on and start chatting. Otherwise, we're going to sit here for an hour and have no recording. Thank you so much for being here. I did do a little pre-recorded intro, which Mia didn't get to hear, which kind of gave a summary, a bit about you and kind of who you are. And Mia and I kind of crossed paths on social media. Actually, the first time you ever hit my For You page was the poem you wrote about the one punch laws, which I think went massively viral, right? Millions and millions of views, which was so fascinating to me, to kind of see, I guess, an Australian creator have a political video like that go so massive. I feel like in the US, there's lots of videos that do that, but it was the first one that I'd been like, oh, this is an Australian talking about Australian politics and law. This is really fascinating. And I thought it was such a beautiful poem. And I gave me goosebumps. I sent it to a lot of people. And I was like, this is amazing. And then I've sort of followed you along in the background for probably since then. When was that?
That was April last year. And so mostly I was over on Instagram and YouTube. So I had I was just talking about Taylor Swift lyrics on TikTok. It was my fun little outlet.
Yeah.
And then the poem happened and then it all changed. It's not such a fun outlet for me on TikTok anymore.
Yeah. And then I was following along kind of from there because I love sassy women. This is my followers know this, but I grew up in a pretty much exclusively matriarchal family. So I've kind of only been surrounded by women my whole life and then went to all girls schooling. So when a woman has a big opinion, I love it. I'm instantly drawn to women like that. So then, sort of followed along. And then recently Mia followed me back and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to message her straight away and be like, hey, can you come on the podcast? Like, I'd love to have a discussion, because I have obviously been through such a massive life transformation recently. And I guess the idea of like traditional marriages and like women being stay-at-home moms, all the financial implications that come along, that is stuff that you do talk about regularly on your page. And I was like, oh, I feel like this would be so interesting for us to have a conversation as someone who was very much a very traditional sort of structured marriage girl who's now on the other side, and us kind of talk about the topic that I really wanted to talk about is decentering men in your life. Because the funny thing is, with me, I feel like I've always been very girls girl, very pro women. I'm naturally drawn to women. I'm not very good at making friends with men. I don't know if that's because I just wasn't surrounded by male energy. So I just don't really know as well how to interact with it outside of like romantically. So I just always thought like, oh, I'd never be someone who kind of like fell into that traditional sort of lifestyle, because, you know, you talk to anyone that knows me, I'm very opinionated. I'm very like strong-willed, very determined. So yeah, it kind of is something where like when I look at like that whole pipeline, I'm like, how did that happen to me? And so willingly as well. Like I was not, in no way was I forced to make any of the decisions I made. Like I made them wholeheartedly with full knowing, like being like, yep, this is the right choice for me or whatever. And I guess when I sat back and thought about it, I was like, wow, I really fell into basing my entire life around my romantic partner. Which was really really fascinating to reflect on now, because it's something that you can be doing and just not even really realize. But before we get into the big discussion on all of that, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you ended up online, and just a little elevator pitch on you.
It's just a series of very happy accidents. I kind of these days live this sort of split personality sort of life online, because I started by documenting my recovery from anorexia 13 years ago. So I was just documenting on my iPad, which had about 6 gig on it, and then put it on YouTube and didn't think to put it on private because I didn't know how YouTube worked. And then people started finding them, and I very quickly started to learn about the stats there: highest mortality rate, lowest funding, which is where my advocacy life started. I started shifting my content more towards spreading awareness around eating disorders. I worked with the Butterfly Foundation for many years as their ambassador, and then started my own business as an eating disorder recovery coach after becoming certified. So we do the really practical work on treatment teams with their dietitians and psychologists to help them with the day-to-day of implementing their little goals that they have to do to get to the big picture goals they want to get to. And then, as we sort of touched on, I had my outlet on TikTok. I am a tragic Swiftie, not such a fan of Life of the Showgirl, and got in a lot of trouble on TikTok for saying that.
I did see those videos, because I told a friend, I was like, oh, I'm having Mia on the podcast. And she was like, girl, like the stuff on Taylor Swift is like the drama on that right now. I was like, oh, no, we're not talking about that. I was like, that would have to be a whole podcast of her and I getting into that. But yeah.
I know, with everything I talk about online, it was the biggest controversy I've been through in terms of like losing followers, etc., which the irony of that was a bit funny to me. But I'm still a tragic Swiftie. I am still a Swiftie if I'm allowed in the club still. And I was just, analyzing lyrics and literary analysis and that kind of stuff. And then the Bondi stabbings happened. And just like every other woman in this country, I was so angry, which is usually my place that I go to. I believe that anger is an emotion we're not encouraged to experience as women, because it's an emotion with momentum. You can do something with it. That sort of sadness and melancholy is a very inward feeling. Anger is outwardly projected feeling. But I did feel a lot of grief and just frustration and a sense of abandonment from our government, because it just is so obvious to me how we end up in tragedies like that. They're so avoidable. When we look at Haran Monis, the Linz Siege Cafe, he was up for dozens of charges of sexual assault against women before he perpetrated that crime. So I was just incredibly angry and frustrated, and just sat down and wrote it. I've always been sort of a creative writer, but I have bursts of it. If you ask me today to sit down and write a poem, I couldn't do it to save my life. But I just put it out there, and as you say, it just went kind of ballistic. It just went everywhere. And kind of like my first platform that I built around mental health, I just saw this community forming and I couldn't walk away from it. And anyway, I can contribute and help and be part of this mosaic of advocacy for women in this space, just like I have been in body image and eating disorders. I wanted to contribute here too. So I do a few things online which all sit under the same umbrella, but it's a few different fronts I'm tackling at once, which can get a bit messy in my head. But it's, just a series of happy accidents. Without those silly little iPad to YouTube uploads, I definitely wouldn't be here.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I would be shocked if you didn't describe yourself this way, but like the way that I kind of like put you in a category in my brain is like just a very like passionate feminist. And like I would say like your online sort of presence is like a lot, just anything to do with like female struggles, female issues, the female space. I would kind of say like that is a big thing that you're across, which is why I followed you. I found it really interesting to listen to your perspectives on things. And I guess like in a different way, like I am like my whole audience is female and I talk a lot about, I guess, female issues, but more so on the like marriage and motherhood sort of space, which people often think like you can't be a feminist if you're in that space, or even if like a lot of people will be like, oh, well, now you're a man-hating feminist that you've left your husband or whatever. And I was like, well, I was a feminist when I was a stay-at-home mom. Like just because I like was in traditional roles didn't mean that like I didn't care about feminism. Like I was able to make that choice because of feminism. Like that's the whole.
All it is.
The third wave of feminism is the like choice, is the big like ideology behind it. So it is interesting when people are like, oh my God, you've become such a man hater. I'm like, become? Girl, I was always there.
I was a member of the club before this happened.
I have never had like a male in my life like not disappoint me. I was like, I have always been in that kind of like category of like not hating men, but just lots of distrust there. And I think when you're surrounded by women your entire life, and you know, like every woman in my family is divorced, you know, a single parent, a single mother, they're all working. My mum is like very corporate, high up, like executive sort of level woman. And then I went to all girls schooling, and, you know, I think you realize very quickly a lot of the issues that face women and a lot of the things you have to battle that men don't seem to go through as well. And, you know, even as a stay-at-home mum, which I always say to people, motherhood is one of the biggest seasons of life where you really realize the injustice between men and women, because like the expectations put on mothers and the things you have to do. Even like I always say to people, like, you know, I had an emergency C-section with my first daughter. They cut you open and like that was a really traumatic birth or whatever. What other surgery do you know that you have full surgery where you're awake and it's like one of the most like intensive surgeries you can have? And then straight afterwards, like, okay, here's a full-time job. Good luck.
That you've never done before.
No rest. Like, off you go. Oh, suck it up. Good to go.
Figure it out.
Like never. Every other surgery, it's like, oh, you know, have 2 weeks rest and do this, and you can't do it. Not when you're a mum. Like, I'm shuffling around my hospital room, like thinking my guts are going to come out my stomach, with the baby crying, and them being like, "You're okay, doll. We'll be back in an hour." And you're like, "Back where?" Like, I need
lots of women have done it before you, and because lots of women have done it before you means that we don't have to change how we set up sort of the structure around you to support you. So just suck it up and get on with it.
But then, like, and that's what I mean by like, there's so much, and like I've made so many videos about this, go on and on about this forever in terms of like mothers today, the challenges they face because society's so individualized, which like motherhood is just not an individualized practice. It's physically not set up to be that way, but we've like gotten to a point now where it's like, no, do it all by yourself. Like you're not meant to have anyone to help you, which is so bizarre. But yeah, people are always shocked, like, and I'm like, no, I've always been like very political, very outwardly like opinionated, like very pro women. I was like, you know, it's just now I'm in a space where I'm living alone as a single woman. So then people are like, oh, she's aggressive now, or like she's a man hater now, or she's this, that, the other. And I'm like, no, I've got a boyfriend. Like I'm straight. I'm in a happy relationship. I'm just, I don't know, not quiet about it. And I just don't see why the two things can't coexist, which is why I was like so drawn to you at first. Even though you're not a mum, I'm pretty sure you're child free by choice.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I don't think you're straight either, are you?
No.
Or am I correct in that? No, there.
No.
So like we're very different on paper. But yeah, I think that is kind of the beauty of this space is like you can kind of, that's what I love about online is like you cross paths with so many people that you end up actually having so much in common with, even though maybe in real life you wouldn't have had the chance to be in the same rooms or be in the same spaces.
Yeah.
What was like the turning point for you to kind of get into your advocacy work? Was it just the YouTube videos or was there other things that were kind of happening like outside of your eating disorder? Had you always kind of been interested in that space or not really?
I was really fortunate because like you, of course, I've had major disappointments from men in my life and, you know, that's all across the board. But it really started from childhood because I had this dual experience of growing up with a very abusive, very controlling stepfather who was very much centered in our household, was very much centered by our family dynamic. And then I had my dad who was separated from my mum from when I was 2 years old. So I was never living full time with him. But he was a huge feminist. He was the biggest feminist in my life growing up. My mum, I've radicalized, but she don't think would have called herself a feminist back then. She also used to vote Conservative and now she votes for independence and Green. So I've really worked hard on that poor woman.
It's been away at her for years.
Yeah. And so Dad was always a huge feminist. He was deeply, deeply philosophical, highly intelligent and just an empathetic, kind, good person who just couldn't put people in boxes. It just didn't occur to him. It's not how his brain worked. I think that's where I figured out to start going down the pipeline of my own neurodivergence because I think that's where that came from. But he was a huge influence on me. And then I went to a boarding school that was very, very feminist driven. It was founded by two women who I think were in a secret queer relationship. Don't quote me. And it was just sort of ingrained there. The best example I can give is we would do our plays and our musicals. And, you know, usually at school, you're partnered with another boys' school and you tend to do those things together. We didn't.
Yeah.
The girls got all the parts. The girls did all the lighting. We did all of the rigging, all of the set design. And I, because I'm 6 feet tall, always played a man. So I was Conrad Birdie and Bye Bye Birdie. I played a Nazi in a play once. I'm not sure why we were doing a play about Nazis, but okay. And so it was just kind of this messaging behind the scenes my whole life that just made sense to me. So I was actually quite disappointed when I came out into the big adult world and went to university in Bathurst. I went to CSU to study journalism. And it was a very sort of rugby dominated, very heteronormative dominated environment. And I hated it. I just felt like a fish out of water. I felt like I was performing as myself for the first time. I felt like I was performing in these really rigid sort of gendered ways. And I felt like that was all in service of kind of this like male gaze, centering men kind of stuff. That's a lot of what we talked about. It's a lot of what was important about nights out. It just didn't feel like it was part of me and my value system. And I developed an eating disorder. I developed anorexia at 19. I went to recovery at 25. And a huge part of my recovery and what I do with clients now is not just about ticking boxes of food and, you know, getting better physically. It's also challenging the beliefs which uphold something like an eating disorder. And a lot of that for women is to do with body image. It's to do with shrinking yourself. It's to do with being obedient. It's to do with belonging. It's to do with being safe. And how are we safe as women in the world? How do we belong as women in the world? A lot of that comes down to how we decenter, you know, how we decenter ourselves and how we diminish ourselves. And I read this book called The Beauty Myth by Naomi Wolf, which I wouldn't recommend now because she's gone down a bit of a QAnon pipeline, but she was a real feminist leader for a long time. COVID did something to Naomi, but we love her for her previous work. And it was radicalizing. It was revolutionary because what it does is it takes you through history and looks through the lens of how body standards and beauty standards have been used as weapons against women, have been used as tools and methods of control. And it follows sort of the political trends of, you know, if you look at the 50s and the beauty and body ideal then, a very sort of voluptuous woman. We go into the 60s when women's rights and, you know, the next wave of feminism was really on a boom. Suddenly Twiggy is the body standard, this very androgynous, childlike beauty standard. And you just watch as those trends sort of unfold and it all just starts to make so much sense. And I felt like I'd stumbled across a conspiracy where I was like, I can't believe that I have been following this script that I've been handed and haven't questioned. And it has literally fed into this thing that was trying to kill me. Now, I'm someone who was genetically predisposed to an eating disorder. Body and beauty standards aren't going to try to kill everyone. It did sort of play into the mechanisms of my eating disorder. Yeah. And I just made this resolute promise to never live in somebody's profit margin ever again, whether that was somebody selling a 12-week diet program or it was somebody selling me something to tell me that my appearance equated to my worth and that it equated to safety and belonging. And that really opened up my world as far as all these values and beliefs that I'd grown up with. It just started to crystallize and it was energizing. And it was a huge part of what got me better. It just connected me back to this strong feminist aligned value system and a very strong sense of self, very headstrong personality. When I was in my eating disorder, I was like a Stepford wife. I had no opinion. I wanted to be as vague and inoffensive as possible, particularly under the male gaze, particularly around men.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because I was also figuring out that I was queer. It's like I
ask like if you identified as queer at that time or not.
So it was recovery. So recovery was this huge sort of cataclysmic set of realizations. So it was about 26, 27 and I was in active recovery for probably 2 or 3 years. And that's when I realized that I was bisexual. I prefer to say queer because people, tend to want to shove you in this binary of bisexuality where I don't date men. I am still unfortunately attracted to them. Would I choose to be? No, that's just what I've been cursed with. And so it was really interesting to learn that about myself as well, that I had been conditioned in all these ways, that I needed to really prioritize and focus on men's opinion of me, how they regarded me, that I couldn't be loud, that I couldn't be opinionated, that I had to fit a beauty and body standard that was appealing to men. And I just lost myself. I was such a loudmouth, opinionated, pain in the ass my whole life. My teachers either loved or hated me for that reason. And I just completely lost myself. And so many of these values that we're conditioned with were a huge part of it. And I just felt like I'd escaped something. Probably how you've been feeling a little bit recently. Yeah. Well, I really felt like my life could have just been very, very different if I didn't have that awakening.
I always say to people, I feel like when you go through something and you hit rock bottom. So for me, like my kind of journey to kind of discovering who I am today was really heavily linked with postpartum depression. And like I just got so depressed. And when I say to people postpartum depression, of course there's a whole different scale of this, but when I say severe, I mean like they're saying to me, we need to put you in like a maternal mental health ward, like you're really unwell. And I'm there being like, no, I'm fine. I can do it. Like, pushing against it. And I think, when you kind of get stripped back to that level and it's like as well, people don't understand that when you're really mentally sick, like you're doing deep work in terms of like, I'm seeing a therapist every single week. I'm, seeing my GP, every 3 weeks. Then I'm seeing my psychiatrist once a month. Like you're seeing doctors again and again and again. And you're picking out
part-time job.
Yes, really, really. And you're picking out wounds that you've probably been avoiding for your entire life and just band-aiding. And then you kind of get to a point where you're like, oh, crap, I can't do this anymore. And that's where you kind of get into, I guess, that rediscovery pipeline. But I remember during that process, the Christmas of 23, I went to a friend's house from high school and she was moving to Sydney and we were saying goodbye and we're kind of doing a Christmas thing at the same time. And she had a lot of high school girls there that I hadn't seen in like a really long time. And we were all just talking or whatever. And I guess a bit of backstory, I went to like quite a prestigious, like all girls private school. So in my grade, like not just in my friendship group, in my grade, I was one of the first people to get married and have babies. Like everyone around me that I went to school with like are all career girls. Like now I'm getting close to 30. There's like been a lot more that have come in maybe the last 2-3 years. But at this time, like I was really one of the only people that had done it. And like, being a stay-at-home mum, it was revolutionary to all those girls. Which is wild to me because I'm like, all your mothers were stay-at-home mothers. I digress. Like it was just really to them, they were just like, I just couldn't imagine having a baby, let alone 2 and like at this age and whatever. And one of the girls, I don't think at the time she realized how harsh of a statement it was.
Mm.
Kind of said to me, she was like, I just don't understand what happened. You used to be so ambitious and you had all these big goals. And now you're just like doing the mum thing. And like, it wasn't said, like it was almost said as if she just couldn't like comprehend, I guess as well, if you've never had kids and you don't understand the identity crisis that every woman goes through after having children.
Yes.
And you just kind of being like, is this my whole life now? Like, am I just a mother? To
and
have someone,
who am I?
yeah, to have someone who I hadn't seen in years, and their like major question to me was like, what happened to you? Like, I always thought you were going to be one of the most successful people in our grade, and then you've just kind of just stopped everything and you're like being a mom. I went home and sobbed about it.
Of course. And I'm sure if you asked her, even at the time, do you consider yourself a feminist? She would have said yes. And well, this is antithetical to that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I went home and sobbed about it, but it was a realization of like, actually, what did happen? Like, what did happen? Because I did have so many big dreams and goals, and a lot of those are on pause right now. And not saying that's a bad thing, but it was kind of a realization moment of like, are they on pause because I want them to be on pause, or are they on pause because it's just happened that way?
Yes.
And I guess that was my first sort of realization of like, oh, my entire life is kind of at the moment based around everyone but me. It is based on being the ultimate like martyr, server, woman, you know, like the ultimate kind of like what, when you thought of like maternal girl, like I was kind of the poster girl for it. And I was really happy. I love being a mum. I find it the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done. And like, I've always been like that since birth. Like my mum was like, you're obsessed with baby dolls, and you've always been like, I'm going to be a mum when I'm older. Like that's what I want to do. So I've always felt that way. But it just kind of made me realize like, is this authentically what I want, or am I trying to please a certain ideal that I think I would have to be? Which is when I started really going down the pipeline of like decentering men. And like that as well, when I started like looking into that, is when I started getting videos on my TikTok being like, hey, leave in the comments like the best ways you decenter men and whatever. And like I remember reading some of those and just being like, whoa, like now I'm like, wow, that was really just like base level stuff, but it was like mind blowing to me. But like if there's someone listening right now and they've never heard of like the idea of decentering men, do you want to give them like a little crash course of what that even means?
Yeah, I think it's similar to people thinking that feminism means hating men. Feminism doesn't mean hating men. Feminism means equality for all. That is essentially, if it had a tagline, it would be that. And then it's got a number of sort of subheadings.
Yeah.
Decentering men is essentially the idea that you're just revolving your life orientation around yourself. It is putting yourself back into that main character spot. It doesn't mean that you don't have men in your life. I have men in my life. I have dear men in my life who are enormously valuable to me. But I don't orient my goals, my sense of self, my life direction, my emotions, how I show up, what I'm allowed to be, how loud, opinionated I'm allowed to be, what opinions I'm allowed to express. It's the thing is that so much of it is subconscious as well. So much of what you're describing, it's the frog in hot water, right? So many of us have done it through periods of our life. I would be surprised to find any woman who doesn't find that at some point that she has centered her life around men. It doesn't even have to be a specific man. It's in the micro and the macro of your life. So you might find that you are orienting your choices around a particular man in your life. Some examples being if you're in a relationship and it's just sort of unquestioned that your entire schedule is oriented around his movements, his career. If he has to move for work, is just no conversation about the fact that that's what the family's going to do. There's no discussion about, does that benefit anybody else? Is that a disadvantage to anybody else in terms of whether or not he's able to maintain friendships and hobbies, but there's no time and energy allowed for you to do those things. Yeah. In the macro, it's how are we conditioned to make decisions or show up in the world, not even oriented around a specific man, but just around how we're perceived by men, right? That can be at work. Are we showing up fully as ourselves around that meeting room, or do we find that we change our tone of voice? Do we sit back? Do we withhold an opinion that we would otherwise share if that was a room full of women? Do we prioritize our friendships with our female friends, do we find that when we end up in a relationship that those friendships tend to go by the wayside? There's all kinds of indicators, and it again doesn't just have to be around any individual man or family members who are men. It can also be more in terms of how you think about yourself, how you position your identity just out in the world as well. It's not just as clear as, well, if you're in a relationship, you're centering men. I have a lot of girlfriends who do not center men at all. My best friend of 32 years has been with her partner for many, many years, and she does not center her partner in any way. She has a very, very healthy sort of balanced view of those things and executes those things really well. So I think people think of it like what you were saying before. Oh, now that you're married, then you must be. Or if you're single, then you don't center men. I know a lot of single girls who center men.
Yes.
Well, watch Sex in the City, for God's sake. I think it was only once that they had brunch where men didn't come up at the table. Like, it is not this simple binary of, single, not centering. And, it's just really complicated.
When you're single is when you are most centering men. Because it's like the way you dress changes, the way everything, because you're like, well, I want the male, if you're straight and single, I want a male to find me attractive. Like if I'm going out by myself as a single woman, like I'm going to wear something that I think a guy would like, I remember when I left my marriage and I started being like, okay, well, I guess I got to go out there and like socialize. And he was my first adult boyfriend and I married him and, the whole shebang. So I'd really never done the single girl, especially older when I had like, more of a defined idea of who I was. Whatever. And I remember just like looking at my cupboard and then being like, I've just got floral maxi dresses in here. Like, I don't think I can wear that to a bar as a single woman, can I? Like, it was really interesting to realize like, oh, like I do feel this pressure that if I'm going to enter the dating market, I now have to dress a certain way, look a certain way, do things a certain way, instead of just doing what I like and dressing how I like and acting how I like. And that was really confronting to be like, well, yeah, I can not do that, but then are my prospects suddenly a lot lower or this, that, the other? Obviously, I got to the point where I was like, well, at the end of the day, I want someone who likes me for me and I want to attract the person that I want. So I'm going to just be me. And if there's not someone who's interested in that, well, I probably don't want to be with them anyway. Because I feel like, a big problem that I think I fell into, which is actually something I've been unpacking lately. So I have ASD and ADHD. Mia was just saying off mic before that she's been recently diagnosed as well. And I've learned through a lot of therapy that I'm like a master masker, right? Like everyone has different strengths with their neurodivergence. Mine is really masking. Like when we did all my testing or whatever, she was like, holy crap, like you're very good at like just chameleoning into like whoever you need to be around. But unfortunately, I do it a lot without even realizing. Like I will just automatically switch my personality to be around, the group that I am. And so I was really fell into the problem of centering men because of my like masking and mirroring. Like I would just end up getting to a place where I'm like, just subconsciously just start doing it. And I realized when I look back at my marriage, like I was like, I don't think it was a malicious thing, or I just did it. Like I just found it easier. I found it was like the path of least resistance, definitely. And I'm very conflict averse as a person. I'm just not, I don't like negative emotions. That's an ASD thing. I suppress them. And so centering men was very easy because it got you less negative emotions from others, not just other men, but other women too. Like it was really a path of least resistance. And I just found myself sort of falling into that really subconsciously. And the funniest thing that I found is like when in the last 12 months, I really made an effort with everything I've done to really just like make myself the main character in my own life, right? And like I've changed all my content to be like that. Like I took my kids offline. I don't really share about them anymore. I only share about me. My boyfriend, I've never disclosed his name online. I've never shown his face online. Like it's very much I've turned into like, okay, I'm doing this for me and like I'm going to be the main character of my own life. And that's what I'm going to put out into the public as well. Because unfortunately, when you make content in your relationship too, you then almost feel like my job was also being in my marriage, right? Like I was
more centering.
I just felt like everything was about me being a mum and a wife and me being this and that. And so I've really tried to push away from that a bit lately. But it's funny the amount of internalized guilt that has come from that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the external pressure and guilt of when you try and push back against the idea of decentering men, how many roadblocks you have of people being like, well, you're just really difficult. You're just like, the biggest one is you're so selfish.
Mm-hmm.
You're such a selfish person, which is the funniest one to me. And like when I talk to all of my friends or whatever, like my best friend, we were talking about this the other day. She was like, it's just the most wild comment for me to see, because she was like, you are the most generous person I've ever met. Like she was like, you're the least selfish person I know. And she was like, when I describe you to other people, that's one of the first attributes of yours that I say. But she was like, it's so funny how really you're just talking about your own life and your own story. But because you're a woman, people are like, oh, it's so selfish, so narcissistic that she just talks about herself all the time. It's like, well, don't we all? Like, don't we all just talk about ourselves all the time? Like, it's not like I'm doing it in a way where I'm like manipulating other people or whatever. It's like, this is just what I'm sharing. Like, this is just who I am. And it was really interesting to kind of watch that happen and watch as well. Like, one thing that people often say to me is like, oh, you get a like abhorrent amount of hate for your follower count, right? Like I sometimes I feel like I breathe and it really like riles people up. And it kind of came down to like for a good while there, I was like, I don't understand what I'm doing. Like I'm not, I don't start beef with people. I don't do like, there's some creators who do like very dodgy things and people just like don't bat an eye or whatever. I say like one thing, like I remember there was a big controversy online because I went and got my toenails painted. And then the next day, daughter, who was like 12 weeks at the time, got RSV the next day after getting my toenails painted. And when I went and got my toenails painted, she was at home with her father, fully cared for, whatever. And it turned into this thing of like, she's a neglectful mother because while her daughter was sick, she was
time
out
traveled.
Yeah, she was out getting her toenails painted. Because I'd said in the video going to get my toenails painted, I was like, oh, Benny's just got like a little bit of a cough. And if you're a mom, like your toddlers have cough. Toddlers and young kids, they have coughs all the time. You kind of just like, oh, hopefully it's nothing, whatever. Then it turned out she got like quite sick and whatever. And I remember just being like, this is wild because no one would ever do that to my ex-husband. Like, and I was watching that in real time when we were couples creating. The hate that I would get for doing things would never translate over to him. And him and I would have those conversations of like, I don't understand because you can do X, Y, and Z and no one says anything. But if I do X, Y, and Z, it's a whole thing, but we're in the same relationship with the same two kids in the same household. This is insane to me, which was just the most confusing thing. And then even in my separation too, watching the difference in his comment section versus my comment section, or like if I talk about anything in our separation, the backlash I get. If he talks about it, everyone's like, yeah, tell your truth, King. It's like, hang on a minute, like we're doing the same thing here, but apparently when I do it, it's not okay. Like it's wild to watch.
Well, it has some really dangerous implications as well because women haven't really occupied public life for very long. And so I think it's intentional, whether or not it's subconscious. I don't think it's some big coordinated conspiracy, but the disconnect between how men are received when they do something controversial, where they're mavericks and they're brave. And, you even think about it in the political sphere, when a man gets up in parliament and he expresses something with emotion, he's really brave and he's really impassioned and he's showing up for his constituents. If a woman shows up and shows an equal amount of emotion, even the same kind of register of emotion, well, she can't be trusted to be in public office. So the fact that women have only occupied these public spaces for so long, and yet we have this disproportional reaction and response to even similar behavior, but as you're saying, even behavior which would be totally innocuous if a man was doing it, is cause for a witch hunt because a woman is doing it, is, I think, a consequence of we were never freely given literally a microphone or a megaphone or political office, or, women used to write under pen names, which were, could be misconstrued as a man's name because women knew that publications knew that they wouldn't be read if it was known that it was written by a woman. We have only occupied these spaces for a very, very short period of time. And therefore, the efforts to get us back into our box are really punitive and really loud and really scary. There's a really great podcast which has just started called The Pylon, and it's sort of looking into some of these experiences, particularly of women. Some of the episodes I've loved, some of them I haven't. The ones that have profiled men, not so much, but the ones that have profiled women, I've loved. Yeah. And there have been a few sort of women in the influencer space who have been on that podcast who are expressing what you're expressing. They're sharing their family life online, maybe not sharing their kids, but they're certainly sharing aspects of being a mother and, you know, being in a family dynamic online. And I don't really follow that sort of stuff. So it's been really interesting to listen to this podcast because I realize I've heard things about these women, and then having listened to the podcast, I'll go and do a deep dive and be like, what is this? She says she hasn't done these things, so I'm going to go and have a look. There's nothing. There's nothing other than you don't agree with her kind of parenting. You didn't like that she went and got her nails painted and her child happened to get sick the next day. You don't like that she said this thing and it might have been tone deaf, but it certainly wasn't malicious and it wasn't something that she intentionally meant to say in maybe the way she said it. And it's not to say that you don't stuff up and then are accountable for it. I've had to be accountable for things I've said online. However, the amount of vitriol which is targeted at you when you're a woman to get that accountability is mountains compared to the little molehill a man might get, which he likely won't get. Like women in the space who are pressured to talk about certain things or talk about it in a certain way. Look at the most visible, successful men in the online space. They don't talk about anything of substance. They're doing stupid skits with their mates and they're doing their sort of grandstandy podcasts where they're talking to finance bros. And it's like, what if they put their neck on the line to talk about something really consequential? We talk about consequential things, but we don't do it quite perfectly. And so we're going to be punished for it, right? Just because you're not doing it quite the way that other people would like you to. And the really sad thing is that a lot of the women who are enforcing that kind of behavior are feminists. But I think that that's part of their decentering of men they need to do, which is why is your target always a woman? Yeah. If you want to bring this energy, I think you should bring the energy way down. Let's stop trolling people. But if you really want to have that energy for public people, let's take it to the other side of the gender spectrum too.
It's funny because so obviously when I was married, my partner and I made content together. Then we separated and we both still created individual content. We've both repartnered. Difference is his partner also has, you know, public content. And it's funny how when she started posting, instantly my DMs is filled with like pitting us against each other. And anytime I would say like, I don't really know her, like I've got nothing against her. She hasn't done anything wrong to me. So I don't why would I talk about her? That's weird. I don't know her. Like that would be so bizarre if I came on here and talked about her. Like I can talk about my marriage, my ex-husband, whatever, you know, lots of knowledge, lots of lived experience with that. I don't really know this person. She seems nice enough. She seems she seems really maternal. I feel comfortable with my children being around her. That's about the most that I can do. And it was just so funny how much people were trying to like bait me into saying something, but not just like bait me into being like saying something like so superficial, like comparing our looks or whatever. And just me being like, I could guarantee you not one person has done that with like my ex-partner and like a similar situation in reverse, you know, like my partner doesn't make online content, so it can't apply in that situation. But like, it's just weird how like instantly then it's like, oh, two women, boom, let's pit them against each other and make them fight it out. And I just like had to say to a lot of people that DM'd me, like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, I don't want to talk about her. Like, this is a really, like, I started getting to the point where I was replying to people being like, this is a really strange DM to send someone. Like, what? Like, why are we talking about this? Why are we doing this? Like, it is really interesting to see that, like, and I think I always have this conversation with a lot of friends. I think social media particularly riles people up because it's female dominated, right? Like when you're talking about high earners online, women, like at the end of the day, like the women who are making, the influencers who are making bank and bank and bank, it's women who are selling products, right? Like, you know, big beauty influencers, big fashion influencers, big lifestyle influencers, they're the ones that are making lots and lots and lots of money. And it is an industry where I think it's a bit harder for men to get traction
especially in Australia, because it's not a paid per view system. Yeah, like in TikTok, you don't have Creator Fund, and Instagram doesn't have Creator Fund or whatever. So the only way that you're making money online is by doing collaborations, which is brand, like it's selling essentially. You're advertising. The problem is men don't buy on social media like women do, right? So a lot of male influencers actually struggle to create traction to make money because adult men are not using social media to choose their outfits or buy. Like they're not. Like, yes, it's getting a bit more popularized, but women are like years and years and years ahead. And so you end up with a lot of males actually doing like skits or whatever because it appeals to younger kids, and then those kids are spending the money, and then that's how they get brand deals, right? And it's interesting to see, like, I feel like social media is such a big industry that gets people really riled up because it is an industry where it's flipped on its head and the women have a lot of the power. The women are the high. Yeah, it really is. Like if you go to an influencer event, it's all the women are the personalities. Oh, and this is just my husband. He's just my plus one with me.
He's holding my camera.
Like he's taking my photos. I just needed a friend to come with me. I've got my partner here. And then usually a lot of the partners too are like, oh yeah, my partner's a stay-at-home dad and I'm actually the one like out here being the breadwinner or whatever. And it makes people really uncomfortable. Like, and it's funny how I always say this about the money in social media. Like if there's an influencer who's making good money and it's obvious that they're making good money, people are like, oh, and she just gets paid money for doing nothing and it's a pretend job. And then you're like, well, what's a stockbroker?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's a pretend job. He's selling fake shares of a real company, but it's not a physical thing. And he's just telling people how to buy it. Like he's not actually doing. But if someone sees a really wealthy male stockbroker, they're not sitting there being like, his job's fake and he has all this extra money to like splash around and do whatever. Like you're just so accepting of it.
Yeah.
And it's funny to see that double standard online and to watch as well that when my content stopped centering my marriage and my kids in a relationship and then started centering me, the amount of discourse I got of people being like, oh, you changed so much and I'm so sick of hearing about you being a single woman and you doing this. That's all you ever talk about. Your divorce is your whole personality or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, and you don't have to be here, but it's just funny, like the backlash that it's distasteful for that. But when, you know, it was all my personality was about being married and a mother, people found that much more tasteful. And I've said it a few times online. I'm like, the only difference is there's not a man in it anymore. That's it. Like, that's the only.
It's all about conditioning. It's, you know, because I personally, even before I realized I was queer, I never wanted to get married. And I'm the only person on both sides of my family, and I've got lots of cousins. I'm the only one who is not married. I'm one of two who doesn't have children. So I'm a real pioneer.
Oh my goodness. I think it's the opposite. Right, keep going.
I never wanted to. I just knew it wasn't for me. I just was never wired that way. I don't know why. I was just saying, and everyone tells you, that'll change. Your feelings will change. And I was like, okay, we're getting to 30. Oh, now we're getting to 35. Oh, no. Oh, now we're almost 38. Still hasn't kicked in. Maybe what I've been saying is the truth, because we don't really trust women, right? That's part of the problem. We don't believe them and we don't trust them. God, do we know we don't believe them? But I've been saying to friends of mine who have, unlike me, really struggled with the idea that, you know, they know what they want. They don't want to be married. They don't necessarily want to go down some more traditional kind of paths, or not even traditional, more like conventional, right? The things we're all expected to do. You don't have to be traditional. I think we put labels on things that are a bit more gray area. Like the conventional path for women is you get married and you have children, you have a family. Like that is not traditional. That is expected of all of us.
Yeah.
The ways in which we do that and that's executed can vary, but they've really struggled with that because, there is a sense of like shame or guilt or fear of judgment, and that's real. It does come at you. When you're young, you're not believed. You will want those things one day. Then when you get to an age where it's pretty clear you were telling the truth the whole time, oh, well, now you're over the hill and you really didn't choose it. It's just that nobody chose you and you didn't get it, right? The big prize of the man at the end. There's a reason why rom-coms, which are marketed to women, end when she gets the guy, because it's really fucking bleak afterwards.
Yeah.
Right? We don't get a lot of sequels to rom-coms because we know what happens after that. And it's It's a lot of it is obviously gendered, but it's wanting us to be in a box. Other people feel safe in their choices and they feel safe in their conditioning if they see everyone else following the same conditioning. People, even the people who love you, want you in a box and tied up neatly to go married, family. Okay, now she's going to be okay forever. And as we know, that is just not true. And as we're learning more and more, I think that we are in such an exciting time for women. I've always said like TikTok is for the girlies. I think that when we look back, TikTok is going to, obviously social media does a lot of not great stuff, but I think for feminism, and I mean this genuinely and earnestly, I think it has done a lot for women, because it's lifted the lid off a lot of women's experiences and taken off the varnish, which we saw on platforms like Instagram and YouTube. TikTok doesn't have the varnish, right? It's people sitting on their couch like, oh, the kids today, like, I just cannot do this for one more second. Or, you know, showing the process of getting out of a domestic violence situation, or, you know, choosing to not have children and realizing, going through the process of that and showing the process. And that makes people really uncomfortable, because when they have gone with the conditioning, even if they might have liked to have done something different, it was safe for them to do it. I see my mum go through it. When I decided I didn't want to have children and I shared that with her, she was so supportive, which is, you know, wonderful. And, you know, there are parents who are not very supportive. She was so supportive. And the conversations we started having became so different. She told me the true experiences of what it was like for her to be a mother. She's shared with me since, like, she loves me dearly and we're so unbelievably close. But she does say, like, there's this parallel universe where I didn't have children and where I had the education I wanted to have, where I had the experiences I wanted to have. And there's those multitudes and dualities in all of us, but women aren't allowed to have multitudes and dualities. We're conditioned from childhood. Look at the gendered toys we're given, the movies we're shown. Like, I'm sorry, Ariel, I'm not giving up my mermaid tail and the ocean for a man. What were you thinking? Yeah. Right? All those movies end that way. And then as we get older, the rom-coms take over and it's the same story without the mermaid flipper, right? Yeah. This is the pinnacle, the peak. This is your whole life's purpose. Forget your talent, forget your family, forget your friends, forget your pursuits. You will still, if you can retain a percentage of that, sure, but that's not the goal. The goal is this. And if you don't get this, you've missed out. And it's where I think the concept of decentering men can be really confronting to women. And it can be really scary to women because they feel like they're potentially going to lose something.
Yeah.
But if you find that you never wanted it, then you can't lose it. You can only gain. You can only gain the actual life that you want. When I decided I didn't want to have children, I felt for months in the lead up to that decision, because I was really on the knife's edge of, was I going to freeze my eggs? Because I have stage 4 endometriosis. So I'd been thinking about that for years. And I kept putting off the appointment to go and get my eggs frozen. And everyone was like, why are you procrastinating? I was like, I'm busy. It's because I'm busy. I just don't have time. And I felt this mounting anxiety and just like claustrophobia. I felt like I was being suffocated. And then I let myself go through the process of exploring, like, is this something I really want? Where did I learn that I want this?
Yeah.
And then as soon as I said to myself, no, I was right my whole life, I don't want this, it was like the ceiling just went up and like the sky reappeared. So I never lost anything because I never wanted it. I gained the vision of my life, and since then have been able to accrue the things I really want and focus on the things I really want. But for some women, that is children and it is marriage. But guess what? It's other things too. And what it feels like at the moment is like you have to choose one or the other.
Yeah.
Because when men are at the center of our energy and our time, and then the family unit is at the center of our energy and time, there is no more bandwidth. So this is what our current sort of structure and setup offers women. And it doesn't surprise me that our birth rate has hit historic lows for a multitude of reasons. Cost of living, housing crisis certainly doesn't help. But it's the fact that we haven't offered women a really great deal where it doesn't matter if you want to be child-free or not. You get to have your dreams and your ambition and your pursuits, your creativity, your hobbies, your friendships. You can have it all. A lot of women, that isn't the choices on the table for them at the moment. It does look like a binary.
But sometimes I always say, though, that you can have it all is also almost a trap. for women in terms of like,
yes,
hey, we're going to burn you out and overload you, because it's like, you have to have it all actually. Like instead of it being like an actual partnership, say with the person you co-parent with, and being a partnership and you both think, it's like, no, you can work and do all the domestic work and do all of this. And like, that's what I often say, that I'm like, sometimes you can have it all myth. The reality of it is not possible for you to juggle all of that at once. And I always say to people, it's really funny, like when a man is saying he's having a child, you never think like, oh, and what are you going to do about your job? Like, it's
what are you
always just like,
on?
oh, he'll be fine. Like, that's sweet. Like, no worries. And like, when I was a stay-at-home mom, so I spent literally all my time with my children. And then when I separated and I went down to 50-50 with my ex-partner, because to us, I was like, well, that's the healthiest thing for my children, to have an equal partnership with both parents, right? And he's a great dad, very hands-on. I have no qualms whatsoever that he isn't capable to look after them independently. He is great. I never worry about them when they're with him. And I had a lot of internalized guilt for a long time of being like, oh my God, I just feel so shit that I only 50% of the time, blah, blah, blah. And then I kind of realized like, hey, when I was a stay-at-home mom, my partner was working 6 days a week. He was home very, very sparsely. He would often leave before the children woke up and come home after they had gone to bed on a weekday. And his only day off of the week was Sunday. And never once did I look at him and be like, you're a bad dad. I'd be like, no, like, fine, all good. But because, and in saying that as a 50-50 parent, not that I had to do that, but when my children are in my custody, because of the flexibility of my job, they don't go to daycare. Like they're at home and we, because I'm like, well, they're going to be in school soon. I'll never be able to do that with them again. So I might as well enjoy them, have them at home with me. And I was still like, it's not enough. I've got to be there with them every waking second of every day. Otherwise I'm a crappy mother. And it was funny to realize that I'd never had those thoughts about men. And like, when I, sometimes when I ask friends to do something, or I'm trying to even work things, I'll get, people being like, oh, like I can't do that because it's during the week and, my husband's out for, looking after things. I'm like, well, why? Why is your husband automatically out? Like, why can't he do it? Oh, well, because X. I'm like, no, but because why? Like, actually ask yourself, because why? And it's funny, I posted a video recently where I was kind of saying that since becoming a 50-50 parent, although I don't love it, like I wish I could have my kids in my home with me every day, I was like, it's really shown me the possibilities women can have when you actually aren't expected to do majority of the domestic and parental load. Because
I was 50-50 in the home.
Yes, I've been able to achieve so much because I have no choice but to do 50-50. Like, and also it's not like I can palm my kids off onto my ex-partner and he can't palm the kids off onto me if there's stuff going on, because it's like, well, the other person's not in the house. Like, you just have to make it work and do it. And I kind of said in a video that I posted a couple of days ago from a podcast last week where I was like, I think if you could figure out a way to do 50-50 custody, but in a house where you live together and find like some type of hybrid model, like it would revolutionize parenting. And the way women got so angry that I had said that. And when they would be like, this is a disgusting take. And then I'd be like, why though? Why is your partner being a 50% contributor in your household? Why is that bad? And it's funny how there's this expectation only on women to do more and to do everything. And it's just not transferred over onto men. And I always say to people when I'm talking about like, oh, I've really just learned, the catchphrase I kind of tell myself is I'm Barbie and they're just Ken, right? Like, and that's what I think about men at the moment. That's how I've really been trying to like not do stuff based around men. And when I kind of explain that to like friends and stuff, I'm like, I have friends where I'm like, your entire schedule is based around your husband, 100%. And of course, you got to find a balance. You can't just be like a selfish partner and be like, everything's about me and nothing's about you. But I was like, there's no give and take here. There is just give. And you don't even feel like you're allowed to take. Do you have other examples? I'm trying to think of other things off the top of my head that people do.
Well, I think there's another layer of it, even behind the prioritizing their schedule and their time, and whether or not we have higher or better expectations of men as, parents, caregivers, even partners. And that is the excuse making, and we hear about it from when, we watch kids in their dynamics, like a boy hits a girl, he likes you. Like, no.
Yeah.
Don't excuse that behavior. That's really bad. That's a really bad seed being planted there. Let's yank that out while we can. But then it's as when you're a teenager, oh, well, boys are just more immature than girls. So that behavior is excusable. And then it's, well, men just aren't as maternal as women. They're just not as, thoughtful as women. That's why he's forgotten your birthday 3 years in a row, or 50 years in a row for some women. Those videos are always heartbreaking. Or, men are just like, they're just cavemen. They're just one track mind. They just don't think, they just can't multitask. Like these are all learned things, right? That we can all adopt and adapt to. And so it's even the next layer of centering men is not just how is that time organized, who is prioritized, but it's all of the gendered beliefs and excuses we apply to that to make that okay. And to and the greatest irony being, if they're so incapable, why are we letting them run the world? That really concerns me. If they can't run a household, why are they running the government? Why are they heading up pretty much every single major company, every single media conglomerate is headed up by a man. And that's, proliferating all the messaging which we're internalizing. So if they can't be trusted here, then why are we entrusting all of these incredibly important institutions to them without question? So there's so many different ways that it shows up, but it's even just comes back to those core beliefs, which again is why I think you probably get that pushback from women, because when we hold up the mirror in that way, especially when we're talking about, if you're talking about your relationship, you're talking about everybody else's relationship, right? If you're talking about your family dynamic, you're talking about everybody else's. You're not, but that's the mirror that's being held up. And it's kind of like talking about being child-free by choice. There are some parents who are really supportive. There are some parents who react very strongly to that because it's holding up a mirror for something that maybe they haven't questioned, but is just sort of sitting under the surface. But there's so many examples. I think one of the most important tests women can do in terms of how centered are you in your own life, and also what is centering somebody else doing to you, is how is your body talking to you about it, right? Where we very often mistake adrenaline and fight or flight for butterflies, right? Is somebody actually triggering oxytocin and all those happy love chemicals, or are they triggering something which is more about, this is not the right person for me, this person is taking up so much of my brain space, so much of my energy, I'm on eggshells around them, I don't want to upset them. How much of your decision-making process is around you not just managing that person, but even like managing your internal world and how you feel about it. Do you hold yourself back from saying certain things or in a certain way? Do you express your needs? Or when you do you feel like you have to couch it in, this is beneficial for all of us and this is beneficial for you too? Or are you just allowed to express your needs and your wants without the caveat of like, but it won't affect you, or it'll help all of us, or it's good for the family, or it's good for you too? But I think particularly that, we see so many women who are so exhausted, so fatigued. They're experiencing like chronic illness on top of chronic illness. And all of this comes from somewhere. And it's coming from stress. It's coming from self-abandonment. It's coming from a disconnection somewhere. And the body is very often screaming at us before the brain kind of catches up. But I think we see so many examples, but a lot of it shows up in dynamics, right? Like, how are you orienting yourself around somebody versus if you have a crappy day, are you just allowed to have a crappy day?
Yeah.
And
it's funny that you said it's funny that you said about the body, because like since leaving my marriage, the biggest thing that people tell me is, oh my God, you're so radiant. You look so good. Like I lost a lot of weight, and a lot of it was like I exercise a lot more and stuff now, but a lot of it just kind of just like, it was almost like I felt like I had all this water weight or something. It just kind of like just shed off me or whatever.
Yeah, and inflammation.
Yeah. And I kind of just like say to people, I'm like, I honestly just felt like when you abandon yourself so much and you center everything about yourself around someone else, it does physically start to show up. And then when you start doing things that make you happy and that prioritize yourself and put yourself first. And like, shocker, I've done all of those things. My kids are still great, well-adjusted, very happy, have all, fed, roof over their head, whatever. I'm just better for it. And they are happier because I'm happier. Yeah, you see the results like come to fruition. And it really is shocking to see that. And I think one thing that I'm really passionate when people are like, why do you talk so much about your separation and this process you've been through? Is I'm like, because I am showing women that big bad things don't happen if you make a decision for you and put your health, your happiness, your stability first.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, yes, my marriage broke down, but I had a choice. I could have worked on it and compromised and been like, well, I'm married and we have kids and I guess I just have to like figure out a way to work. And instead I was like, you know what? No, I don't want to do that. I'm not happy. I'm not doing this just because it's more comfortable for him if I forgive, get over it, mend, whatever. And instead I was like, you know what? I'm going to go off and give it a crack by myself and, do what I can by myself. And I think it's really powerful. And I say this to people all the time. I think it's really powerful to show women that like there is another option. There's always another option. You can never be so deep in that there is no way out. Like, and that's what I always say. I was like, I was a stay-at-home mum. I had no current references, no current job history, $400 to my name. I didn't really I'm not very close with my family, whatever. And I was like, and I still was like, you can do it. Like, you can figure it out. Like, women are very resourceful. Like, we literally brought life into the world. Like, why can't you, like, if you can do that, like, I always just told myself, I was like, if you can literally birth a human, you can build the life that you want, because that's got to be nothing to literally growing like a brain in your stomach. And you do that without even thinking about it. Like, pregnant women, you're not thinking about like, okay, and today I've got to grow a bone. Like, it just happens, right? Yeah. And so like, I just like love to show women that it's like, there is another choice. And like,
there's so many choices.
If you don't have a life that is fully around men, you can still have a life. And like, I love being proof of that and showing women like, hey, yeah, I moved out. My house is all pink. I only have 2 daughters. And I have a boyfriend, but I never really talk about him or show him to anyone because he's not that important in this setting. Like, obviously in my personal life, I love him, talk about him and whatever. And yeah, life is fine. Life can go on and you can still be happy and still be accomplished and still enjoy things. And I think that is like a very powerful message to show other women. I don't know. Yeah. Like, do you feel that with your journey too? Like showing women like, hey, I don't have kids. I'm not married. Prefer to date women and I'm still like very well-rounded, happy.
I have my own business that I've had for 8.5 years where I've, helped hundreds of people to recover from, probably thousands at this point, people to recover from their eating disorders. Like, I have the most fulfilling career that loops back to, my own sort of survival from this thing. It's about, again, if we could put all the options on the table for women, what would they actually pick up, right? And if you pick up the centering men one, does that then exclude and leave everything else on the table? And that is not to say that, as we said, that having a relationship with a man means that you have to center men or that that's the default. I think it becomes a really good barometer for women who do date men and are romantic and like are interested in being romantically involved with men. It becomes a really good barometer of like, is this a healthy dude? Like, is this a guy who I want to build a life with? If you can both show up as whole people with your own interests, with your own goals, with your own friendships, I think is really important. Yeah, shared friendships is great, but like making sure that you have your time with your people as well.
Yeah.
Where that is never, and we don't oversimplify this stuff. It's never everyone's getting exactly 100% out of a relationship,
all the time.
What they want at all times. It's always an ebb and flow and a back and forth. And I think with the exemption of like illness, I don't think anybody should be getting 100%, but that is what is happening a lot of the time. Women are like the emotional and mental labor shock absorbers for men and for family units. It's actually, if you can have these kinds of conversations, even with a current partner, you might have a current partner who is being centered in your life, who has no idea, because guess what? He's been conditioned from childhood to believe that sitting at the center of the universe is just what everyone experiences. That's just how it is. And you're experiencing that too. And it's like, no, I'm a woman. I've never experienced that. Yeah. I'm not even centering myself. You think the world's centering me? You're delusional, right? That's the other thing. They haven't had to explore that with any kind of curiosity because they're always the default, right? Yeah. And that's not me making excuses. If you watch me on TikTok, there's no excuses here.
Yeah.
I think we should all be curious about each other because then where's your empathy? But you might have somebody who you are centering, who you can have these conversations with, where you can have a more equitable relationship and where you can recenter yourself. If you feel a hesitation about having that conversation with your partner, that's something worth exploring.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and going, oh no, I don't center my partner, but you would hesitate to even talk to them about the topic, well, that's an indicator, not just an indicator that there might be some centering going on, but it might be a reflection of maybe sort of the health status of that relationship. But if you would feel comfortable exploring this with someone, great. If you go into sort of a dating situation where you can have these conversations, great. If you can't, if they push back on that, well, you've just saved yourself a whole lot of pain and a whole lot of time and a whole lot of energy that's about to be sucked out of you like a vampire. But it's not to say that the intent here is always nefarious or intentional. Yeah. Sometimes it is. That's why we come at this compassionately. You know, if women find that they do have a default for centering men, you were conditioned that way. And you might have therefore been conditioned into a relationship where it is the safest thing for you right now to be centering that person, right? So it's all shades. It ranges from, not that self-abandonment isn't a terrible thing, but it ranges from that to the seriousness of, you know, this can be really dangerous for women.
Yeah.
And I think just doing that barometer check, whether it's with a current partner or a prospective partner, is going to tell you an awful lot about who's sort of sitting across the table from you.
If someone is listening to this and they are thinking like, oh, do I center myself or do I center, you know, a man or my partner or whatever, would you say that would be the first step that you would recommend to them to, like, if they wanted to be like, okay, well, what can I do to change this? Like doing an audit on your life?
Yeah. This is very in line with what I do with my clients, which is change, right? I'm helping people to make change. They're where they are, and then there's where they want to be, and then there's a big canyon in between, and then we're building the bridge bit by bit to take one step at a time.
Yeah.
Because you can't change what you don't acknowledge. You can't acknowledge what you're not aware of. So the first step of any kind of change is self-observation, right? You don't have to do anything. Just listening to this conversation and maybe going down a bit of a rabbit hole of content of, you know, decentering men. There's some great podcasts, some great, you know, there's not a lot of literature on this yet. I think there's a couple of books which have been released in the last year. I can't remember the titles of them, but there's some really good podcasts around this topic and some like long form essays and stuff which have been written. So just a period of observation. And I think this is also where like female friendship is so important. These are the things to bounce off your girlfriends and girlfriends who you trust enough to talk to about these things. Like my girlfriends are my lifeline, you know, my two best friends. I've known Josie since we were in kindy, 32 years, Sarah since we were 14, what's that, 23 years. They are my anchor when I'm lost. They're like my mirror when I'm fucking up. They're my like soft place to land when things are really terrible. They're my biggest cheerleaders when I'm, you know, on the right track. And they are the first ones, if I'm ever getting lost in something, who I can go to and be like, this is a behavior I'm really concerned about, or I'm just noticing. I actually did this in my last relationship. I went through a breakup this year. And so this doesn't just happen with men, by the way. I mean, it is just more socially likely that it's going to be with men because that's how we're all conditioned. But I'm programmed, like in my schemas, I'm the rescuer, right? Like I'm the one who will be able to find someone in a 10-mile radius who needs help. And I'll be like, I'll throw everything at it and not really do a self-check-in and audit myself whether that's okay. And it was my girlfriends who were like, you're doing it again. Like you're giving away too much of your energy. You're not really expressing what your needs are. And I didn't even see it. So your relationships with your girlfriends are so important. And this is another indicator of centering men or centering anything which is, you know, taking you out of your driver's seat of your own life is where are your girlfriends and how much investment are we putting into that? Because here's a really honest moment. It is really hard to be friends with women who center men. No judgment. I understand why it happens, but it is really, really hard to maintain those relationships because it's like dipping in and out. It's really, any relationship maintenance needs consistency and it needs showing up. So if you have an honest moment with yourself of, yeah, I look around and where are my girlfriends and where's like the depth of those relationships, I think that can be a really big mirror of like where things might have gotten to versus where you would like them to be.
I also always say, like, I guess this is something I only learned from my own personal journey, but like of the last 12 to 18 months. But I also found the easiest way for me to start decentering men in my life was to start becoming okay with being alone and being just with me, just by myself. I was just saying my relationship now is so different to my marriage because I am not afraid of holding a boundary and him being like, oh, it's too much for me, see you later, and being like, okay, well, that's fine. I know I'm okay without you. Like, I love you and I would love to be with you, but if push came to shove, I know I've proven to myself that I will genuinely survive and be okay if you are not around. And when you realize that self-power, it becomes a lot easier to be like, well, I'm not going to put X, Y, and Z man first because I don't need to. At the end of the day, worst comes to worst, he goes, well, fuck you, see you later, for in whatever context that is. It's like, okay, well, I'm okay without you, see you later. And once you kind of realize that, I've found it so easy to, especially in a relationship sense, to be like, no, I need you to meet me at this point. And like, I'm not bending on that. Like, this is what I need. I totally understand if you can't meet that expectation. Not everyone can always meet every expectation, but that is a non-negotiable expectation with me. And if that's not something you can meet, well, then maybe this isn't going to work out for us. And it's been so shocking to me to realize, like 9 out of 10 times, he's like, yeah, that's fine. Like, I'll work on it. I'll do better, whatever. And then I was like, wow, was I just shooting myself in the foot for so long because I just I wouldn't even put the option out there and try and see if he would meet it because I was just like, well, like, what if he says no? And then I'm screwed. Like, I need him there or whatever. And so
your instinct was probably right if you didn't bother asking.
Yeah. And then I was like, it really, like I always say to people, I'm like, if you really want to feel empowered and you want a healthy relationship and you want that like 50-50, the biggest way that I have found like getting to that point has been like, I just ended up doing the work to like, well, I'm okay if it's just me and that expectation isn't met in the end. And the thing I'm left with is just myself. And a lot of women find that confronting to look at that.
Well, I think that's where it's why I feel so passionate about, I don't know, like presenting different options, because I just feel like I'm wired in certain ways where I just want to show, like, to me, this is normal. Like, for me, I will travel on my own. I'll go on holiday on my own. I'll take myself out for lunch. I'll where it's safe to, like, go hiking on my own. And there are people who want to come. Mia, you're going to Lord Howe? Can I come? You're going to Bali? Can I come? No. Next time you can come. This time you can't come. Because that's always, it's not an either or. And I think that that's how it's framed to us, is like, it's either it's alone and really sad, and you have to, and it's because someone couldn't or you didn't have, or you have and then it's all wonderful. And the amount of holidays I have been on where I'm sitting at a restaurant, like reading, or I'm as I love to write, or I'll be working on projects while I'm away, and I'll just be sitting with a glass of wine and, writing something. And I will be surrounded by couples and none of them are talking to each other.
Yeah.
And I'm the one being looked at like I'm the social pariah. And I'm like, well, I'm not talking because I don't have anyone to talk to. Why aren't you guys talking to each other?
Yeah.
Right? Where that is the scarier option to me. I want to be on holiday with someone because I'm like, I want you to be here and you want to be here. And this is something we're choosing to do together. It's not because we're afraid to do this if we didn't have each other. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. If your baseline is not just I'm fine, but life can be exciting and expansive, and I could have a different experience if I did this by myself. When you're on holiday by yourself, you're not checking what someone else wants to do, their energy levels, where they want to eat, what time they want to wake up, like if they had a bad sleep. It's a dream. It's wonderful. And then it's also wonderful when you're there with a partner or you're there with friends. That's a whole different kind of fun and excitement and expansive. But it's not that we sit in this binary for women of either or. It's either this or it's that, versus, again, like the expansiveness of the nuance of all the choices, right? And that sometimes you'll see people in partnership who are miserable and then happy the other 90% of the time. And sometimes you'll see someone who's on their own, who's lonely and miserable 10% of the time and ecstatic to be with themselves the other 90%. Yeah. Different seasons of life, right? Like I'm sure when you got out of your marriage, you were like, deep breath.
Oh, yeah, I was lost.
Peace, silence. Like no one is coming into my radius. This is my time, right? Versus then you go into a season where you're like, yeah, I'd really like to meet someone. Yeah, I'd really like partnership. I'd really like that to be a healthy cross-section of time with myself and time with this person. And it's the variety, right, that is taken from you when it's like, here's the box, here's the 3 options, pick one. And it's like, what if I don't want any of them?
Yeah.
So yeah, and look, I just think that I've always been unconventional in so many ways. As I'm getting towards 40 for the first time, I'm like, oh yeah, I'd quite like to meet somebody. Because I have that true evidence now of I have lived my life to the fullest. Yeah. I have, lived expansively. I've done everything I want to do. I've pursued and am pursuing all my dreams. And yeah, that would be an experience that I would like to have now. I would like to meet somebody and be in a relationship with them. I've never had that really strong urge before. I've been in relationships, but I've never felt sort of like it's been at the forefront, right? So how many of us are on timelines that we otherwise wouldn't be unless we'd been told, like, you're reaching 30, now you're reaching this. And there is an element of privilege here, being somebody who's queer, being somebody who doesn't want to have children. Like I can't preach to women and be like, just live like I do because I don't want children and I fortunately get to date women. So there is an element of sort of it not being necessarily the typical experience, but that doesn't necessarily mean that these things aren't available to you as well, as far as the values that are sitting behind them and some of the experiences that are sitting behind them in terms of truly living life on your own terms.
It's funny. My friend is dating a man that's a bit older than her. She's younger than me. She's 27. She's dating a man that's 37. She's just met him, and I met him a couple of days ago. And just for a bit of fun, honestly, a bit of shit stirring, we were talking, and then I said, 37, no ring, no kids. What's wrong with you? Like, just kind of like putting back the question.
Left on the shelf.
What happened? Like, why no one has snapped you up yet? Like, I was just being a little shit stirrer, to be honest. Because so many women, if you're single at, 37 and never married, never had kids, like people are thinking like, oh, she's dud. There's something wrong here. And it was so funny to watch his face kind of be like, that's a bizarre question I've never been asked before. Like, what do you mean? And then he was like, oh, I just haven't found the right one. And I was like, interesting. Like just watching men like not even have to comprehend topics of like where it's like, 37, you've not met anyone, you haven't been married yet, and you haven't had kids. Like in a man's world, it's like, oh yeah, whatever. Like he's probably just been really busy with his job, and
he could never do it, and he'd just be this epic bachelor.
Mm-hmm. And it's just funny to see the change in energy when you start applying the same concepts that women have and all we think that we have pressuring us onto a man, and just watching them be like, what the heck? Like that is the weirdest thing anyone's ever said to me. Why would you even like bring that concept to me?
Yeah.
Which has been really great. We have chatted for a really long time.
Yes.
I don't want to stop. I'm like, I could talk about 50 other more things here, and like because like even when you're talking about eating disorders, I had an eating disorder when I was in high school, and I had to like bite my tongue because I was like, if we go down this path, I was like, we're not even going to talk about any of the topics.
It'll be a marathon
that we had planned for today. But I have so enjoyed having you on and just like having the conversation. I would love for you to like leave like little plugs for yourself, like your social handles and stuff, because I'm sure there's going to be women who are watching who are then going to be like, oh, I want to go follow her and I want to learn more.
There's a whole rabbit hole. So to keep it really simple, what Mia did next, you can find me on Instagram and YouTube. That's where there's a blend of sort of the feminism, women's safety and eating disorder stuff. And we've got the 2 podcasts, Beyond Body, which is eating disorder stuff, Pod Like a Girl, which is more sort of feminism, women's issues. And then TikTok is also what Mia did next. And that's pretty much like feminism, women's safety. And then the business, Beyond Body Coaching, where we provide eating disorder recovery coaching. We also do things like retreats and online courses, that kind of stuff, which is beyondbodycoach.com. We have quite a lengthy wait list, but I do have 2 coaches who work for me. So we try to get people seen as quickly as possible. But yeah, if you just sort of search what Mia did next, that's a good place to start.
The eating disorder recovery coach, like that's niche. Like I feel like that's a pretty niche role. Like I don't really know anyone else that does that. But when you say waitlist, it's obviously something that is very beneficial and lots of people want access to.
Yeah, so it's been around for about 10 years. Carolyn Costin, who started Montanito, she's a therapist. She also has lived experience. She opened one of the first residential centers in the US.
Yeah.
And our one and only residential centre, which is partially run by the Butterfly Foundation up in Queensland, is based on her model. And she always had these, what she called sort of recovery mentors in treatment. And they were people with lived experience who were fully recovered, who weren't actively sort of in their eating disorder anymore, but were trained to do the practical stuff, the in real time troubleshooting with people, because we know that, you know, an eating disorder thought can just unravel somebody so quickly. So we're doing things with people like we're challenging their fear foods with them. We can go like clothes shopping with them, go to cafes and restaurants with them. We're helping them plan, like if they're going on holiday, what do we pack proactively? Like how do we plan so we don't go, well, hang on, the food that I would usually eat at this stage of my recovery isn't here. What am I going to do? So it's really the practical implementation of what their treatment team is setting for them. So yeah, it was just such a very cool thing to learn from Butterfly when they said, why don't you go off and be a coach? I was like, what the hell's an eating disorder recovery coach? So it's this 2-year, very rigorous certification with the Carolyn Costin Institute.
Is it all types of eating disorders or just anorexia?
Yeah. And it's disordered eating. Like I more so refer to that spectrum as behavioral profiles, because people, you know, don't often sit really neatly into one diagnosis. And there's people who are experiencing disordered eating who are just not being caught by the system because they don't fit neatly into one of those silos. So very often we'll have people come to us who are like, oh, no, I just like noticed that I chronically diet every once in a while. And then we scratch the surface and we're like, well, yeah, like we've been doing this for like more than 10 years on a cycle. This is probably a bit more disordered than we realize. So yeah, it's really, I'm very logically driven. So being able to have somebody come with this thought or this belief and to be able to, it's kind of like what you see me, how I respond to men online. I'm just much nicer to my clients. Men will say something and I will just like logically strip, you know, layers off it until we get to the bare bones of like, this is what's actually going on. Yeah. It's sort of a similar thing, which is why I think I was primed for that on TikTok, where I'm just like, that doesn't make sense. That is totally illogical. Let's talk about it. Comment
responses are my favorite. I'm just like,
they're so fun.
I'll sit.
Women are like, how do you?
And I'm like, yes, I'm ready.
Women are like, Mia, how do you do this? How do you cope? And I'm like, they're idiots. It's so easy. This is not hard.
I love it. Oh, okay. Well, I will also leave all your little links and all your handles and everything in the show notes if anyone wants to do that. Mia and I are going to have a chat soon on her podcast too. So I'll also share that when that is all done. But I have so enjoyed having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bella. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I really did not want to end that conversation with Mia. I just didn't. I honestly said to her, I could have chatted for hours more about so many different conversations and so many different topics. So if you would like me to get Mia back on to talk about anything else in like the feminism kind of world, please let me know in the comment section. I would be more than happy to have her on. She is just such a good conversationalist. She has such interesting and insightful topics and ideas. And I truly enjoyed having that conversation, and I hope you guys did too. I kind of said to her that like something that I love about UPB is it's a really great way to introduce topics, ideas, thoughts to people or an audience of women who maybe have not been opened to that line of thought before. So I hope you guys found it like a really interesting introductory sort of conversation to decentering men. And if you want to, I'd really encourage you to go off and kind of do your own investigation and explorations. Now, I don't want this episode to go on too long, but I haven't done a bedtime story in a couple of weeks. So I'm just going to quickly touch on something that's going on in my life because I think I will bring it back to talk about in the next couple of episodes.
but we have gone screen-free in this house. I just want to let you guys know that. I had a diabolical weekend with my children and I literally just snapped. I was like, that's it. We're getting rid of the TV in this house. I can't do it. I can't do the fighting. I can't do everything that is coming on with having the TV on. So just quickly, that was my quickest of quick bedtime stories for this week because I want to let you guys know that we're doing this. So then when I start to talk about it, probably next week or the week after, you guys aren't like, what the hell, where did that come from? But as I said, I've left all of Mia's details down in the show notes. If you enjoyed that conversation and maybe this is the first time you've listened to Up Past Bedtime, please follow us on Spotify. It is so helpful in growing UPB and letting us have more conversations like this. Okay, I'm like rushing myself because I'm so mindful that the recording is like well over an hour. Okay, I'm going to love you and I'm going to leave you. Sweet dreams.